Velkommen til Learn.tech, en læringsdugnad om teknologi og samfunn, med Silvija Seres og venner.
Hello, and welcome to Learn Applied AI. My name is Silvija Seres, and my guest today is Tom Allen, the founder of the AI Journal. Welcome, Tom.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me. Brilliant to be on your show.
Being here means being in Birmingham, I guess?
Yes, it does. Nice sunny Birmingham at the moment.
Yeah, it's funny how in these digital times we've stopped asking people, how are you? And we start asking, where are you? So,
how I start all my conversations.
But at the same time, this is actually making it much more easy for us to speak to people like you, which is a great advantage as well. So, Tom, I'm just going to say a couple of sentences introducing this session, and then we'll start our chat. So Learn is a Norwegian educational media company for corporates, but really we want to educate the whole population, not just the working population, and we believe that the whole world needs to know and needs to learn. We want them to learn more about the new technologies and how they change our business and our society. And at the moment, we are making a series on applied AI, where we believe that AI is a necessity and probably the main tool of our futures, but at the same time that way too many people are scared of it and believe that you have to have at least a master's degree in maths or computer science to be able to talk about AI. And what's most important to learn about AI at the moment is how it can be used as a tool. And we've created some stories, and from my understanding, you're also going to help us expand that view.
I hope so.
So with that, I would like you to tell us a little bit about yourself and then about your journal. And I'm always asking people to be personal in the way that they describe themselves. So, what drives you? Who are you?
Yeah, love it. Thank you. So, my name is Tom Allen, and I'm the founder of the AI Journal, and I started it around February 2020 or January 2020, and we launched in February 2020. And my background is marketing, so very heavily involved with engagement and community growth and building the technical side from content development. And through working at an engineering company, that led me to... And I knew nothing around AI, and I knew nothing around automation and all these technologies. And that was only in November 2019. So that led me into this whole new world of understanding, and has completely switched up my experience from being agency side to all of a sudden learning all around these new technologies. And really through that, it kind of taught me quite a lot around who I am and what I've done. And I didn't progress very well at school myself. And through that, I kind of understood where to learn. And through university, kind of picked up my kind of learning patterns. And I think the reason I moved towards these technologies is you have to see a lot and to learn a lot, which is exactly how I learn compared to reading and writing. And through that, I got into learning and loving, which I wish I'd learned at an earlier stage, of reading a lot of books and understanding different ways. And that opened up a lot of opportunities for me to develop the journal, develop my career, and develop my roles within marketing. And I love to explore things and take big risks. So I'm a very risk indulgent person, and through that, not just in work and through chasing new opportunities with the journal or roles I was in, but also in my personal life and doing skydiving and going all over the world and meeting new people. I mean, that's what I love. I got called by someone at Expert AI a black belt in network marketing because I just love to speak to people. I love to meet people and love to get out there and see what their story is, similar to what we're doing now.
And now tell us about your journal. What's the origin story and what's the reason for, existence?
Thank you. So the origin story was I started it in my bedroom as a blog. There was nothing more than that, and I thought it wouldn't turn into much. And then the lockdown happened in the UK, and we all got furloughed, and I worked through it for 6, 8, 10 weeks. Being in engineering, I had to go back pretty swiftly to look at automation lines, and sales skyrocketed because everyone wanted to start using AI, which I'm sure we'll start talking about later. And the order values went up through the roof. But through the journal, it really allowed me to use this platform to educate people. And that's what we're there for. The core vision behind it is to educate as many people as possible on AI and emerging technologies. And a lot of people get quite scared or quite held back by wanting to learn about it, or it doesn't get explained properly. And through that, we really found an opportunity to get not just our side, so not just our own reporters or own news team, but people from in business to come and talk around the different topics. And that really led us to go into all sorts of areas, whether it's reports and webinars and reaching people. And it's been a really explosive journey and really fun journey. To give you an idea, February 2020 we started. Now we reach around 220,000 people on a monthly basis. Our LinkedIn audience grew from 4,000 in December 2020 to nearly 30,000 today, all organically. And it's really great to just see that we've built this community. Nearly all our resources are free, and to really, similar to what you're doing at Lawn Tech, to provide that value and to provide that education point, to know people don't have to feel panicked or worried about it, but can come and learn in safety or in their own time and learn from the best of the people, not just one-sided, but people, whether it's the heads of AI at BMW, directors at Highland, or CTOs at Capgemini, they can come and learn from us and come and learn from them. So it's a great way to get the name out there and great way to understand a technology that seems to be taken over every single day. So
two things I love about this. So one is that it's democratizing knowledge. I think we all need to learn, not just people with PhDs are invited to this future that we're all going into. And the other thing is that we need to learn from each other. I think that, the times where we all had to go seek a professor and, drink from the source of knowledge are over, because innovation happens where it's being applied at the moment. And it's through these applied stories of innovation that I think we can all move as fast as possible. So a wonderful concept, Tom. And why AI? That's the other question I have. Why did you choose to focus on that?
Honestly, I don't know. It was one of those things. It just happened, and that's my honest answer, because I moved from an agency background into automation, and with automation, you have to do a lot with machine vision and a lot of automation lines and predicting faults and detecting patterns. And it just naturally led me to understand what automation is, what machine vision is. I had to do a lot of nighttime reading, a lot of further reading. And that's where it annoyed me. And I thought, look, this is a topic that's exploding. I'd seen all the reports, and I'd come across Gartner and Forrester and IDC and all these other reports from McKinsey, Deloitte. And it just kept hitting me that, and PwC especially, I think they did a report that highlighted it's going to add 15 trillion to the economy by 2025. And it just hit me that this is going to be a big area, and I need to write about it, because I don't know if it does exist, but I couldn't find any places that did talk about it from a ground level view, from the operator's point of view. It's always journalists and always editors they're editors and journalists. They're not technical people. They're not people, or maybe they had a background in it, but they're not people that are in it every single day, which is why, similar to your point, we wanted to democratize it. And AI just naturally became an area, and now it's exploding at a very rapid rate, and you're seeing massive funding rounds or big acquisitions and big ideas coming through the door. So I guess luck, but also I've also been I've never been that fully involved in tech, but because of my role, I got launched into it very, very quickly. Head of marketing at an engineering company, needed to learn about it. And it just, to me, seemed like a golden opportunity to talk about it and to help people, because like we've already said, it's hitting every single industry in every single way you can imagine. There's nothing I don't think it will be involved in by 2030. And Elon Musk said I think it was only about 3 weeks ago, Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, came out and said AI is going to be more valuable and more important than fire, water and wind or something, and basically the natural elements, which kind of gives you an idea. And Elon Musk, to put a daunting view or a more optimistic view, said it's going to be more powerful and more capable of changing the world than something like nuclear warfare will be able to. So it gives you an idea of how powerful this technology or capability is, and what it's going to help us achieve. But in long story short, I'd attribute it mainly to luck falling into it, and I'm really glad I did, because now we can provide a very valuable message to and valuable opinion to people.
I'm smiling. I'm just rereading The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Have you you remember it?
I haven't read the book. I watched the film, but it's on my list. It's one of those ones I need to watch.
This guy, the president, who becomes the president of the galaxy, and he doesn't really know why. And if he starts thinking about it, then he doesn't want to do it anymore. So he was. I think sometimes instincts are really important and great. Listen, let's talk about applied AI. So through your journal, you get to hear a lot of really good stories.
Yeah.
And I believe in storytelling. That's what people remember. They don't feel like they're learning. They feel like being entertained while they're learning.
100%.
So let's just pick out some stories. Some of your favorite stories. You mentioned to me that you have spoken to, for example, the city of Capgemini.
Yeah.
What's their application of AI?
Yeah, so they touched on one area which within climate change and waste management, and how the kind of two intersect. Obviously, Capgemini, I used to work for Capgemini, or their subsidiary Capgemini, Sogeti, which is towards testing and infrastructure testing and security testing. But the idea behind that is to paint a picture of anyone wondering how climate change can help. And this is we've written loads of articles on it, not just from that team, but from loads of other people. And the idea that it can help with weather patterns, it can help with predicting, and you've got to think about it as a full ecosystem, right? So it can help with predicting planting foods when the right time is, how to predict areas of fires, so wildfires that are happening, and this is areas that get talked about in the article, and predicting waste management, because if you have bad waste management systems and it's all going to landfill sites that become overcrowded, you're going to have a natural problem where you've got a lot of waste in one area. So AI, and it's what I always look at AI, I say to people, don't get it complicated. AI is essentially a prediction tool. That's, if you want to really break it down to what it is, it's a prediction tool. It can say what's going to happen by when very, very accurately, because machine learning will run thousands, if not millions, of patterns. And through that, you can understand where to plant foods, what the right time is to plant crops, so you get better return on your yield, more money for as a farmer, so you can plant better, you can understand your cycles better. From a water perspective, you can understand where water use is going. Obviously, with food and cows, I read some stat about how many millions of liters of water it takes to feed one patch of cows, and obviously through that you can use it a lot more streamlined, and you can get water there a lot quicker, and through that you can understand where the next wildfire is going to be, so you can get the fire team deployed quicker and stop it from ever happening, which is a bigger and bigger crisis, as we're seeing today with climate change.
So this is AI in agriculture and AI in climate support or management.
Yeah. And you've got to think agriculture is part of climate change. People forget that, because it's an ecosystem. If one part doesn't work, another part doesn't work. If you burn a forest down, you're not going to have natural wildlife. And that's how AI can help, because it will say, if this happens, this chain of results, this compounded effect is going to hit this area, and you'll be able to stop it before it happens.
Can show you scenarios. I just wanted to give you one more example there, from very Norwegian example. We did a series here in Learn with a Norwegian innovation cluster called Seafood Innovation. And basically they work with these fish farms in the ocean just outside the Norwegian coast.
Very cool.
200,000 to 500,000 fish in one pen.
Yeah.
And now AI is being used to monitor their health and well-being, but also optimize the feeding patterns, water quality. It can detect not only a certain percentage of stressed fish, or undernourished or overnourished fish, but it can detect an individual fish.
It's incredible.
It's actually quite amazing by looking at the patterns and their gills and so on.
Yeah.
So it's changing our world. So that was AI in agriculture. You also mentioned to me that you have examples of AI in engineering.
Yeah. So AI in engineering is a great area because it's great for spotting detections and spotting faults, which is huge. I used to work in engineering and I'd be on the automation lines and doing assessments, and I wasn't doing the assessments. I was more looking for marketing opportunities, but I'd be with the engineers who were doing the assessments.
Tom, just a question. You're talking about automation lines. Can you please give people a picture of what's an automation line?
Yeah. So say the clothes you bought from a local retailer, or you bought it from Amazon or ASOS or H&M, that's going to go through a packaging system where it's going to have tons of automation. So they're going to pick it out, arguably from a robot of some kind that will drag it through. It'll be picked off, it'll be packaged, and through that, it'll be a mixture of human and automation work and robotics. And through that, that will be packaged up. That will be probably folded very quickly and organized. That will go onto an automation line. That automation line will have a distribution service of where it's going to, what part of the country or what other country it's going to. And that will use a line that no one touches, but it will automatically find its way to the back of a truck to take it up to your local depot, which then comes, and then you get your delivery driver, here's your new dress or whatever it is, or new shirt. And through that, it will be it might be in multiple stacks or it might be in single stacks. So you can picture the problems that can arise from it, because if it's all humans doing it and taking it off and moving it, it builds up a time lag. With this, you can automate a whole system that takes it all through this long journey of a massive warehouse, and they're huge, they're massive sites, within 5 minutes. So it's no people running around. It's very systemized, very ordered. And through that, you improve your timelines massively, because you've gone from point A to point E within 5 minutes, and that allows you to get your product quicker. Another example is with wine. So you can imagine the pain it would be to bottle each crate of wine that needs to go to a wine cellar, or Coca-Cola, another client we dealt with. And a robot will basically palletize all of that, spin it around, use a Stowbly robot or something similar, which is for small goods, and pick and place it into the box very, very quickly. I'm talking like 10 every 10 seconds or something. And through that, it will package it up. A massive gantry robot will palletize it, spin it around, plasticize it up, and then it will move across an automation line or conveyor system into the back of a truck. And it makes, imagine trying to get all people to do that, the weight, the loads, the time, it just wouldn't work. It would be, you'd have a lot of delays and you'd have a lot of problems. So that's, hopefully that gives a good picture, especially with logistics.
Right. So what AI is doing here is basically gathering production data. It has sensors in these robots, and it can find ways of making optimal paths through this factory, finding the optimal timing, looking for bottlenecks.
Exactly. So you'd use something maybe like machine vision, because you have to capture all of it, or people are using more sensors, which is Internet of Things or an IoT device. And they'll be positioned, and you see it in homes at the moment, but not to get off topic. So you'll see it within a factory or within a warehouse or a logistics place, and it will be monitoring every single move, every single fault, every single direction. And mistakes happen with machines from time to time. Did it go down the wrong path? And the good thing is, if there's a problem, the AI, maybe using a camera or maybe using a sensor, it will feed back to that algorithm, and it will learn that pattern so it doesn't happen again. If you try and teach a human that, you're trying to teach it God knows how many patterns. So you'd have a problem with the amount of people that you have within the workspace, because you'd be all on top of each other. But a machine can be registering, if you stick it at a bird's eye view, it can be registering 50 different views all at once. So it could be spotting how that parcel didn't go to the right returns area, why that didn't go to the send through area. And it will pick up all this data, and it will create a feedback loop that just keeps saying, that's where that problem is, that's where that problem is, right down to the smallest detail. So if you're going through, again, on an automation line, look at returns. If you're returning an item, they need to go somewhere, and they need to go back to the seller or back to the warehouse. They'll use machine vision to scan all the IDs, use the RFID scanning, and that will use AI to register where things are going, so it can predict when the high times are, when do they need more staff in, what areas are getting most returns, or what areas are getting sent out the most. And all this allows you to predict better, give you better accuracy on where resources are needed, where things need to go. So very, very strong as a business because it can ultimately save you cost and save you a lot of money.
Basically gives you detailed insight in the
100%.
organism of your production. Also, we talked a little bit about AI used in Airspace for two different kinds of things. One is patterns of travel, and the other one is optimizing the whether it's the airport or the airplane itself.
Yeah, so you got two ways. You got the engineering side, and you can use something. And it's not so much AI, but it's a simulation tool which uses AI to a degree, because anything that uses data is essentially probably AI, because it's an algorithm that has to process the data. And through that, you can understand when the engine's going to run out, when the brakes are going to happen. You can robustly test it. And digital twins is very good for that, because it can test all. It's a simulation tool, so it can basically simulate all flights, all how quick the engine's going, all the infrastructure to the plane to make it very safe. So when you're going away with your kids on holiday, you know you're on a very secure plane that's been checked thoroughly, and it's not open to human error. So you know things aren't going to break. But on a commercial side, which is the fascinating side, is using the data. So when you go on holiday, or when your colleagues, or when anyone goes on holiday and you go to an airport, it's going to be registering, especially if you've got a smartwatch or a phone. They're going to try and track as much data as possible as they can to understand when do you travel, what time of the year do you travel, where do you like to travel, who do you travel with, how many people do you go with, are you traveling for work? All these filters that they will start attributing to you to think, okay, we want to give this person the best possible experience ever. We want to give them the best user experience, which is in an airport situation. Do they stop for food? Do they like to grab a coffee? Do they like to rush through? Are they always last minute? And it will be counting all these things, maybe not over one trip, but over 5 years. They're going to get a very good profile of who you are, where you go, why you go. And this is all AI. And what it will be able to do is create a feedback loop for you to say, you're going to holiday at this time. Here's a special deal for this place that we know you love to go to. And there'll be all the follow-up details as well. We know you like this hotel. We know you like to travel with so-and-so. We're going to send the same offer to her or to him or to your partner or whoever it is. And through that, you get a better experience, because it's cheaper. They'll offer you better rates to get you included and to get you going. And it will be a better experience because they'll know who to target, and they'll know where to go, and you'll be on planes, or some people don't like flying with certain airlines, so they'll be able to pick that up as well, especially from someone like Skyscanner, who send you these rates, maybe not the airline themselves. So you get the best rates, and you fly with who you love, and you don't have to spend as much time booking or searching, or those panics of where do we go on holiday. It's all suggested to you, and that's all largely done through AI and data. But obviously you can't do much with data unless you have AI. So it will give you a much better experience and a much cheaper experience.
Very interesting. So what about smart cities? Maybe we can spend a couple of minutes on that as well.
Yeah. So smart cities are the biggest area going, in my opinion. It's an area that's going to change so rapidly at the moment, because a lot of people are trying to build it in. And smart cities can be anything from traffic light systems to water and the infrastructure, how you get the water to your home, through to cars that can recharge on the road. Electric cars are becoming bigger and bigger. One of the big things is if you don't get to electricity point, it's a lot harder to recharge a battery pack than it is bringing a case of fuel to you on the side. And looking at all these different ways, from smart motorways, detecting criminals, looking at people that are driving quicker so they can understand why are they driving quicker, where are they going. And I think eventually all this data will be fed to autonomous vehicles, so you have Optimum or your computer, because that's essentially what Tesla's driven off its computer. That's why it's so valuable, because the shape and design can change. But it will be looking at how can I get you to your place the quickest time, and it will be creating all these different interconnecting feedback loops. And not to get too complicated, but from a single traffic light where they know it has heavy footfall, so a lot of pedestrians are always there. Take somewhere like London, like right in the middle of Oxford Circus, there's a lot of people, so there's going to be a lot of people crossing the street. Your computer's going to know that's not an optimal driving path, and it'll also know from a side of where water needs to go to, how more water needs to be processed, and that goes into investment. So it's a real, I don't want to get too broad, but it's a real hub of how do you give someone the best experience when they're traveling, or how do you make it more secure for them? And I think that's what we're facing a lot today with AI regulations, of capturing people's data, because that's what they're trying to do in London, and understand who the person is, where they're going, are they a threat? We can look at them, we can read them, and we can see that how they're walking, what car they're getting in, all these sensors and all these data points is what I'd tell your audience as well. AI is largely driven by data points. So think of data points, and AI is going to be using those data points to help and to change, whether that's when you like to have your coffee for a shop, or when you like to get in the car, or when you need to drop your kids off to school, or what activities your school has, or all these different things. They'll be trying to feed it to understand, how do we give you the best experience, and how to make you more safe.
Cool. Yeah. So there was that. We can also spend maybe so smart cities I also think of as a problem where we now get so much data that we are in some ways, what the danger I see then is that we might abdicate our local politics to AI. So I think that every city in the world, with any respect for itself, is now wanting to be a smart city. But I think before we do that, we need to decide, what does it mean for us? So, what does it mean to have a smart city London versus smart city Oslo or smart city Bergen? Because these are very, very different places.
Cultures,
and different strengths, different local cultures. And so I think this is a really interesting area to look at the problem of hybrid AI-human. So what's AI going to be doing for us, and what's going to be uniquely human task in the future? Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Where do humans fit in this applied AI loop?
Yeah. So humans are always going to have a role in the loop, or at least I think they will. I mean, there's talks of technologies like AGI, which some people say is 100 years away, other people say it's 10 years away. And that basically allows cognitive thinking for a robot or a piece of AI software that will, I mean, you might have read about it at Facebook, where they started having its own conversation. I don't know how true that is or to what degree. But when people look at AI,
just interrupt, because I'm an AI researcher by in my past life, and I actually think that AGI is a completely it's an interesting philosophical topic. I think that practically it's irrelevant. I think that the real I believe that if we abdicate, if we leave to the data to decide on ethical questions and political questions for us, then we are basically giving up our purpose on Earth. I think we need to want to do something with our lives, with our countries, with our and if we don't want to be the ones deciding, then what's the point of the whole thing? Then really we are just clogs in this machine that's optimizing profits or efficiency for somebody, a few 3-5 people on the earth or something like that. So I'm very, very keen on AI, but as an applied tool. And super keen on understanding that there has to be a human behind the steering wheel wanting to do something with this tool. Unless we know what we want to do with the tool is useless and dangerous.
Well, I mean, it's going to be dangerous and it's going to be very useful. And people that are scared of AI or think it's going to take their jobs, and it's not controversial, but we're upskilling all the time. There's more innovation. And if you're not ready to board that train to upskill yourself to use AI and understand it, you can expect it to take your job, because it's designed there for people that are high achievers, in my opinion, and it's going to be brought into a lot of businesses. But I always look at it, AI is there to aid you, to support you, to make you better, to give you better decisions, not to start taking things away from you. And I mean, there will always be people. I mean, there's 7 billion people in the world. I'm sure there's certain people out there that want to use AI for the wrong reasons. Whether we like it or not, they're going to have different viewpoints to what we have. Whether we think AGI is right or wrong, or whether we think AI being used in industry is right or wrong, they're going to want to use it. Business owners and publicly traded companies are very big on profits. If they can find a way to get rid of people, they will. And if that's what AI can unlock, because it can unlock rapid learning 24/7, 365 days a year. And I think I mean, goes back to Elon Musk's point. He said it's more dangerous than nuclear warheads. And he said there's going to be more intelligence created by machines, almost 100 times to one, than there will eventually being created by humans. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, because I see it as very derivative of what AI can do. And it's it can't create, it can't stand on its own footing, and it doesn't really have bias. People say it has bias, but that bias is fed by humans. So it's not really their bias, it's our bias, just collated.
350%.
Yeah, and I think it's an area. My key message would be: look, it's going to be used in everything, and it's growing in everything. Okay? You look at any report, AI is getting bigger. It's being used. Last year in 2020, just in the USA alone, AI startups received $1 billion in funding each week. So that's companies that are funding up to a maximum around $20 million. $1 billion a week in $20 million companies or less. So you think of all those companies that need, and some of them are only getting $500,000. And that number, that's just in the US, let alone the whole world. Hotspots like Tel Aviv, Singapore, London, Paris, Berlin, Germany are getting very hot, especially in the manufacturing with all their car makers. And you think all these starts, that to me just said, I remember reading that stat and I was like, wow, this is exploding. This is not going anywhere. And I think there'll always be room for humans. So just to finish off on that point, technology doesn't drive change, people do. And that's why I've always been taught, and it's not my favorite quotes, but it's up there because we look at it from a media point of view. It's in all these press releases and people use the word digital transformation, and they do not talk around people. They do not say that they need people to drive these changes. If you do not have a person, if you do not have a data developer, if you don't have a data scientist, if you don't have a solutions architect, you're going to do nothing with the data and you're not going to create anything. And that's why companies get themselves into big ruts, because to try and speak in plain English to your audience, and that's how I always try to speak, if you've got a business that, say you're in retail and they're having a massive logistics problem, and they bring in a consultancy, whether it's McKinsey, PwC, or someone big like that, Gartner, to analyze this and to do all these changes, they might build you something which is called a testing center of excellence, or they might build in something where you can understand all the data, essentially, that you can make use of it. And they might build you a framework or a system to analyze that data. But once those people go from that company and say something changes in a retail shop, like a new product comes in, a new size, a new variant, a new color, new pair of shoes, a trend, because an influencer on Instagram decided to support a certain brand, you try feeding that to the algorithm or the data that this company's installed, and you don't have data engineers to update it and to edit it and tweak it, you're going to be in a big problem, because it's not going to understand, and it's going to think, I don't, and then it's going to get you poor results. So it's always, AI is powerful, providing you've got the right data. And I read somewhere, to give your audience another view, there's a thing called structured and unstructured data. So structured means it's very organized. So you can read it and you can see what it means. You can understand what category is. If you're looking at a house, it will be filtered by color, street, rooms, location to school, amount of cars that you can park on the driveway, all these filters, how many sitting rooms, whatever it is. If you have unstructured, it's basically saying under the streets, you've got the number of bedrooms. So it's irrelevant. So it doesn't match up.
It's a text.
It's a text.
Yeah.
And 95%, or 95, 96% of data at the moment is all unstructured, which is bizarre because we're creating God knows how much every day. And you can see where the problems lie, and you can see why people drive these changes, not just looking at AI. And I mean, it's a great marketing tool because you can say, oh, we're AI enabled. Doesn't mean anything to me. And I don't necessarily take that because you're AI enabled. I mean, I'm AI enabled. I've got my smartphone and it uses IoT. It uses all sorts of AI. If I try and speak to it, hey Siri or whatever, it's all data. So it's very important. And that's the key message I want to tell people. People drive the change, not AI driving the people. And that's why I say you shouldn't be scared, because there's a digital skill shortage. People don't know how to use it. Sorry, I've gone on a bit of a rant, but it's very passionate to me.
No,
and
but I
really
share it with you.
Yeah.
And so it's people with skills that drive the change. And that's also my main worry about the future, because if people don't understand, this is just a tool. It's an incredibly powerful tool, but it is a tool. And unless we understand what the tool does and how it can be used, and have some images in our heads on how it's being used, we are not going to be able to use it. And as you say, if you don't use it, then it will take your job eventually, because
exactly. If you don't upskill, it'll take your job, because you need to upskill. I mean, it's in everything. I just quickly, to give another example, I'm obsessed with the area of insurtech and fintech. So finance technology companies and insurance technology companies.
As in insurance, and fintech as in finance.
Yeah, so financial tech companies and insurance technological companies that are changing it in a very way. So if you look at it from a user perspective, nearly everyone I know needs insurance, and they need insurance for their house, for their car, for their holidays, whatever it is, whether it's commercial or user. You are collecting, and especially and I always say a fintech is going to move into holidays, and it's going to move into insurance as well, because they're collecting all that data. When you go shopping at the supermarket, what products do you buy? When do you buy it? When do you go to the store and buy it? What time of the day do you go to the store and buy it? How many other items do you buy with it? Do you buy more regularly at lower cost, or do you do one big shop? Do you buy online from this retailer? And it's going to be collecting all this data from you as a user and from you as a purchaser, and understanding where you go, what you do, and tracking you either through, if you've allowed it, through your watch or through your phone. And it makes it very easy for them to give you a better user experience, because they can say, oh, here's a coupon for this shop that we know you like to shop at, because we've seen that you go there 20 times in the past 6 months or whatever. And here's, back to our point earlier, also, if you buy now, we'll also give you a discount for flights to wherever it is you're going with 3 people that you always normally travel with. And you can see from an application view how it's going to affect the user, because it's just creating this constant feedback loop of understanding them. But you don't get that feedback loop without people that are very skilled, like the data developers, to understand it. So that's another example.
We have actually one of a really cool example of AI being used in finance in Norway and in Sweden. I don't know if you are familiar with the Klarna.
Yeah, I am. Yeah. The payments.
Yeah, and they just are extremely good at connecting the data and making sure that they get a better payment.
Well, I'm not massive on Klarna, so I'm not a big fan of what their business model is and who they are. But it's great how they're using data, but they're essentially, to me, a credit company, and I don't like credit companies. So I think it can be very intrusive on understanding the consumer, I think. But it's a very smart way of how they're doing it. They're building it in a very successful way. But
I agree. And, it is a part of every finance company. So, or, that kind of risk and understanding of that risk. And then there is a Norwegian startup that I really love called Aprila.
Okay.
And they're a bank, and they provide small businesses with loan facilities. They are much better at analyzing SMB. So normally banks are quite cool with the small businesses. It's high risk and relatively low gains compared to big businesses. And Aprila has made it into their speciality to understand the quality of the business from random open data you can find about those businesses, and thereby being able to provide loans to these companies at competitive rates, which I think is a wonderful business model. Listen, Tom, we talked about AI in agriculture, in climate, in engineering, in production, in travel, and in transportation, as in airlines, airplanes, or cars, as in digital twins. We talked about smart cities. We haven't touched smart homes. We'll save that. We have talked about AI in finance and in insurance, but we haven't talked about AI in education and health. I think we have enough to talk about for at least another half an hour, but we only have 5 more minutes left. So I'm going to give you a choice. Do we want to say something about smart homes, education, and health? Or do we actually want to give people some advice on where to go next? What should they read, in your opinion? Or do you want to do both? I
think I'd like to focus on healthcare because it's such a big point, but where to go next as well. I mean, education is a huge topic, and I'd suggest people go and download the reports we've got on the AI Journal and the work you're doing as well, being an education company. And VR is going to be huge for education. I'll leave that point there because it's immersive. You can understand it. Kids can be in a room and they can see what's going to happen next. and they can understand how things are changing in a very practical on-site view. But that's also very crossive to healthcare, which is such a big area. And all of these intersect. That's the great thing with AI, right? Because if you're using IoT, smart homes, that data can be used for your healthcare provider to understand your eating habits, how healthy you are, your buying, when do you go to sleep, are you getting enough sleep? All these associated with your health and whether you're at high risk of cardiac diseases or whether you aren't getting a proper sleep, or all these feedback loops that can be created. And I mean, VR, we've got an example in the report of it being used in surgery. So you can put a headset on and you can see through a body. And obviously, I don't know how patented it is and how available to general use in hospitals it is, but it basically allows you to scan the whole body and give you an AR layout of that person to detect where the problem is. So you can put a sensor in them and it will highlight where you can see and what's going on with that certain organ. And I think it's very important in healthcare to understand it's probably where it's going to be the biggest game changer, because it's going to keep the most people alive. You can use AI to detect where cancer is going to happen. So they can run it through loads of different simulations and they can use all those data points on you as a person to understand, is this going to happen or what to look out for? So when a doctor's doing an assessment, where should I be looking? Obviously, it's a bit of a slow mover, but where should that person be touching, feeling? What kind of questions should I be asking to get to a diagnosis? Not just with cancer, with God knows how many other diseases, Parkinson's or all these other unfortunate things that happen. And with pharmaceutical as well, to discover new drugs. So with COVID, with AI played a massive role in understanding how the COVID vaccine could be manufactured and what the right geometrics combination was to create the vaccine that can save millions of lives. That's proving that you see on the news. That's all using AI to understand where should this be going and what data should we be using. And that's a key message I'd always tell people. AI does not need to be complicated. It's a prediction tool. It's an accuracy tool. It's something that it's a capability. I wouldn't even class it as a technology. It's a capability that if you've got a problem, it can predict it for you at a very high level or a very low level using something, or one of the buzzwords that you hear, machine learning, which is essentially just learning data sets as quickly as possible. So to learn more about it, and that's what they do in healthcare, VR and everything else with smart devices, I would honestly look at obviously check out the AI journal. We'd love to do lots of free resources. Check out what Law and Tech are doing. And there's a lot of cool areas, especially if you want to get more technical and understand it at a very deeper level. Places like IEEE that you can go to for journals, and looking at it from an influencer side. So a big area that I use is LinkedIn. I honestly get more insight from LinkedIn than I do from Forbes or TechCrunch or Wired or any of these other kind of science journals. To look at who these people are. You can follow people, whether it's people like Danilo Magari or Kate Stracchini, who's great on data, or someone like Kieran Gill-Murray, all these people, and we've got a free resource we're building into the website. That's where I'd go to check out more, or use their Twitter, because they talk about it in much more depth that we don't have enough time for today, but also application way, but also considerations, like which we didn't get to touch on today, but the ethics, which is a huge area, and bias and all these different areas. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm someone that sees it from a top level. They're someone that's working in very big corporations and deploying it and using it for a lot of clients and building those models. So that's where I'd recommend going. And I'd also recommend to stop telling yourself it's a tricky topic. It's a very simple topic if you need it to be. It's a prediction tool. It can be used in anything and any way that the next time you're thinking about how it's being used, look around you. Look at your phone, Siri, look at when you're going to the next shop, look at when you're getting in your car. All these parts, somewhere, either in its production or in its current state, will be using AI and will be there to give you ultimately a better experience. It's not there to take your jobs. It's there to enhance your job. It's there to give you a better experience, and it's there to help you. And I'll always stick to that message.
Tom Allen, I think I'll leave that to be the famous last words.
Yeah,
and thank you so very much for coming here to learn with us and to inspire us.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Du har nå lyttet til en podcast fra learn.tech, en læringsdugnad om teknologi og samfunn. Nå kan du også få et læringssertifikat for å lytte til denne podcasten. på vårt online-universitet learn.university.